I thought I was leaving my husband in the safest hands possible when my best friend offered to help while I was away. But while I was gone, she wasn't just doing the laundry. She was auditioning for my life. I have known Diane since we were 19 years old. 22 years. We had been through everything together, the kind of everything that builds a bond you stop questioning, because questioning it would feel like doubting gravity. She was at my wedding. She was in the delivery room when my daughter was born. She knew the password to my phone, the location of my spare key, and the exact way my husband takes his coffee. I had given her all of that access freely, gratefully even. I understand now what she did with it. By the time I landed back home 11 days later, my living room furniture had been rearranged. My personal items had been moved. There was a candle on my kitchen counter, her scent, not mine, sitting in the exact spot where I keep mine. And my husband looked at me from across the kitchen with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Not guilt, not relief, distance. Here is what nobody tells you about this specific kind of betrayal, the kind that lives at the intersection of your marriage and your oldest friendship. It doesn't arrive like an explosion. It arrives like a photograph developing in slow motion, detail by detail, until the full image is in front of you and you understand that what you are looking at has been true for longer than you knew. This is the story of how I lost 2 people in 11 days and how I almost didn't survive, understanding why. The trip was not optional. My mother had been hospitalized in another state. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but serious enough that someone needed to be there to manage the medical decisions and the paperwork and the particular loneliness of a hospital room at night. I was the only child. There was no version of this where I didn't go. Marcus couldn't leave. He was 3 weeks from a project deadline that had consumed most of our year. We had a daughter in school. The logistics of an open-ended absence were complicated in the way that the logistics of a life shared between 2 people always are. Diane offered within hours of me telling her, "Go. Don't think about the house. Don't think about Marcus. Don't think about anything except your mom. I'll handle everything here." 22 years of that kind of love. That is what her offer sounded like. I said yes without hesitation. The morning I left, she came to the airport with Marcus to see me off. She held me for a long time at the departures gate, the kind of hug that communicates more than words do, the kind between 2 people who have held each other through enough real difficulty that physical comfort has become a language of its own. "She's going to be okay," Diane said, "and so are you." I believed her on both counts. I got on the plane, and somewhere between that departures gate and the 11 days that followed, something shifted in my home that I was not present to witness, and that nobody thought to tell me about. The first 3 days were unremarkable. Diane sent updates. My daughter had eaten well. Marcus had worked late both nights. The house was fine, practical, informative, exactly what I had asked for. Then the updates shifted. Not dramatically, not in a way that would have alarmed a reasonable person reading individual messages in isolation. But I was not reading them in isolation. I was reading them in sequence, from a hospital waiting room, with the particular acuity that comes from being far away from your life and dependent on someone else's account of it. The updates became less about my daughter and more about Marcus, his stress, his long hours, how hard he was working, how much pressure he was under. She had made him dinner. He needed a real meal. You know how he gets. And they had talked for a while about the project. He seemed better after that. Small observations. Thoughtful, even. I thanked her and put my phone in my bag and sat with a feeling I couldn't name. By day 6, the group chat the 3 of us shared had gone quiet. Marcus was responding to my direct messages, briefly, with the distracted brevity of a man under deadline pressure. but he had stopped initiating contact in the way he normally did. The small, unprompted check-ins that are the texture of a functioning marriage, the voice messages, the photographs of things that reminded him of me. They had stopped. I told myself it was the deadline. I told myself it was the distance. I told myself I was catastrophizing from exhaustion and fear in a hospital corridor, and that I needed to give both of them grace. I was 3 states away from home with my mother in a hospital bed. I chose to believe the generous interpretation. It was a message I was never meant to see that changed everything. Diane had been added to a work group chat I shared with Marcus, a practical thing set up months earlier for household logistics. She sent a message into that chat by mistake, meant clearly for a private thread I had no visibility into. It was 4 words. He really needed that. Nothing explicit. Nothing that could be presented as evidence of anything specific. Just 4 words sent to the wrong thread, deleted within minutes, preceded by the briefest appearance of a conversation I was not part of. I stared at my screen for a long time. Then I booked an earlier flight home. I did not tell either of them I was coming back early. I landed at 6 a.m., took a car from the airport, and let myself into my own house with my own key at 7:15 on a Thursday morning. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Clean, warm, faintly floral. Not the particular combination of scents that belongs to our home, but something adjacent to it. Close enough to feel familiar. Different enough to feel wrong. The living room furniture had been rearranged. Not dramatically. The sofa had moved 18 inches. The armchair had rotated slightly. The coffee table was in a different position relative to the window. The kind of changes that someone makes when they have been spending enough time in a space to develop opinions about it. My home had given someone else opinions. The kitchen was where it became undeniable. Her candle, a specific scent she had burned in her own apartment for years, one I had always associated entirely with her, was sitting on my counter in the spot where I keep mine. My candle had been moved to a cabinet. Her coffee mug, one I recognized from her kitchen, was on the drying rack next to our mugs, integrated into the row like it belonged there. In the refrigerator, organized with a neatness that exceeded anything Marcus and I maintained on our own, were the specific ingredients of meals I did not cook, cheeses he liked, wines she preferred, the quiet inventory of someone who had made herself at home. I stood in my kitchen for a long time before I moved. Marcus came downstairs at 7:40. He had not heard me come in. The expression on his face when he saw me standing at the kitchen counter was not the expression of a husband surprised by his wife's early return. It was the expression of a man caught between 2 realities simultaneously. The relief of seeing me and something else underneath it. Something that looked like recalibration. He crossed the kitchen and held me, and the hug was real. I want to be fair about that. It was real, but his first words were not, "I missed you," or "How is your mother?" His first words were, "I didn't know you were coming back today." And in that sentence, in the particular weight of today, I heard everything he wasn't saying. I did not confront Marcus immediately. I want to be honest about why. It was not patience or strategy. It was the specific paralysis of standing in your own kitchen, holding evidence you cannot fully interpret yet, choosing to gather more before you speak because speaking too soon means giving someone the opportunity to build a story before you understand the full shape of what happened. I spent the next 3 hours moving through my own home quietly. What I found was not dramatic in the individual pieces. It was devastating in the accumulation. Her presence was everywhere in the small details. A book on the nightstand on her side being a concept that should not have existed, with a folded page marking her place. A playlist on our living room speaker, saved under a name that was not mine and not Marcus's. A photograph on his phone, visible for a fraction of a second when a notification appeared while he was making coffee. Of the two of them at the kitchen table, laughing, taken by one of them in the warm light of an evening I had not been present for. I did not say anything. I waited. The private message thread appeared when Marcus left his phone on the counter unlocked while he showered. I did not go looking for it. It was open on the screen when I walked past. I read enough. Not explicit. Not a single message that could be reduced to a clear and simple category of betrayal. But intimate in the specific way that emotional intimacy is intimate. The language of two people who have been sharing a private register that exists outside the awareness of everyone else around them. Inside references. The particular shorthand of people who have been talking, really talking, in a space constructed carefully away from view. 11 days. She had built something in 11 days that had the architecture of something much longer. I called Diane while Marcus was still in the shower. She answered on the second ring, and the warmth in her voice when she heard mine was so immediate and so practiced that for a single second, I almost doubted everything I had just seen. That is the specific power of a long friendship. It carries enough genuine history that the performance of it is almost indistinguishable from the real thing. Almost. "You're back," she said. "How's your mom? How are you?" "Come over," I said. "We need to talk." The pause that followed was less than 2 seconds. But I had known this woman for 22 years. I knew what her pauses meant. "Of course," she said. "Give me an hour." She arrived composed. That was the word. Composed. Put together in a way that communicated preparation without announcing it. She brought coffee from the place we had been going together since our 20s, the specific order I always got. And she set it in front of me with the ease of someone who has decided that familiarity is the best available defense. I let her sit down. I let the coffee sit between us. And then I asked her, in the same tone I would use to ask about the weather, to explain the playlist on my speaker and the book on my nightstand and the message I had read on Marcus's phone that morning. The composure lasted approximately 4 seconds. What followed was not a confession. It was a negotiation, the specific kind that someone attempts when they are trying to determine in real time how much you actually know before deciding how much to acknowledge. She started with minimization, then context, then the language of concern. I was worried about him. He was struggling. I was trying to help, which is the most sophisticated version of this particular defense, because it reframes the intrusion as care. I had loved this woman for 22 years. I knew exactly how she argued. I knew every register of her voice and every way she moved through a difficult conversation, which meant I also knew, with absolute certainty, when she was lying. Marcus and I are still together. I want to say that plainly, without making it sound simpler than it is. We are together in the way that two people are together when they have chosen, deliberately and with full awareness of the difficulty, to work through something that most people would walk away from. It is not easy. It is not the marriage we had before that Thursday morning. But it is honest in a way that our marriage perhaps was not. And I have found that honesty, even painful honesty, is a more stable foundation than comfortable assumptions. He did not sleep with her. I believe that. What he did was allow an emotional space to develop that should never have existed, and then allow her to furnish that space while I was 3 states away, managing a family crisis alone. That is its own category of failure. We have spent a great deal of time sitting inside that category together. Diane and I have not spoken since that morning. Not from a formal decision, not a conversation that ended with a declared conclusion. She left my house and I closed the door, and the friendship simply did not survive the closing of it. 22 years. A woman who knew more about me than almost anyone alive. Gone in the space of a single conversation at a kitchen table with cold coffee between us. I think about the airport hug sometimes, the way she held me and said she's going to be okay, and so are you. I think about whether any part of that was real or whether I was already, in that moment, standing inside something she had already decided to do. I don't know, and I have had to make peace with not knowing. Here is what I want to leave you with, not as a lesson, because I am not interested in performing wisdom. I am still in the process of earning, just as an observation. The people who want what you have rarely look like threats. They look like the people who show up, who offer, who say the right thing at the exact moment you need to hear it. They look, in fact, exactly like the people you trust most, because that is precisely the point of entry they have identified. What she wanted was not my husband specifically. What she wanted was my life. The specific, particular life I had built. The house, the stability, the history. The man who knew her coffee order because he had heard her give it 100 times at my kitchen table. She wanted to step into the shape of it. And she waited 22 years for an 11-day window to try. Pay attention to who shows up when you leave the room. Because not everyone who stays is staying for you.